G'day everybody, and for those who have come in late, you're listening to Expand the Phantom Podcast.
Washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck, and upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die." The Phantom! The ghost who walks. The Phantom. Enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom.
Hello, we are the Chronicle Chamber team, and this is Expand the Phantom Podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com. Our email is chroniclechamber@gmail.com, and you can subscribe and watch us and listen to us via YouTube, iTunes, various Android apps, and many, many other platforms as well. Now, this is episode 213. We're going to have some fun tonight. We don't have an interview. We're not even going to be talking about the latest comics or news. We're just going to talk about some random, unique Phantom facts. And of course, that is a facts with a PH. So my name is Jermayn, and I am joined by Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, good, Jerm. It's good to be with you tonight. Talk some Phantom, and there's a lot going on in the world, not a lot of it fun. So the opportunity just to come together and talk about some random Phantom facts is a nice tonic, I think.
Yeah. Now I've just realised your last name is Fraser. We probably should change that to PH just to keep the theme that we are going on.
I do that. I use that for my Instagram handle, actually. Yeah, at Fraser Dan PH. So haven't posted on that, I think, in 18 years so before it even existed. But there you go.
Now, as we all know, the Phantom is quite unique and fun with a PH, of course. And with so many creators and Lee Falk and everything else, there's a lot of cool stuff that happens. And you know, we've all been listening to the new podcast, the new Phantom podcast, and they've come up with some interesting facts as well, which coincided with what we had already been planned. So so what we thought is basically we wanted to go over some cool facts, and we've come up with, I think it's about 10 facts. So if we don't get too caught up, it might not go for too long. Now, first of all, before we do go into them, I do want to give the following people and places a heads up. For these are some of the places that we sourced or that we've talked to come up with some of these facts as well. So besides the two of us, of course, some of the other sources is deepwoods.org, which was probably the first and best Phantom website for that type of information. Came before Chronicle Chamber, and Chronicle Chamber kind of came out of the hole that was left out of Deep Woods when Garan or Brian closed that place down. So
I'm just so glad that website is still up. And if you haven't ever looked at it, deepwoods.org, do yourself a favour and just go and do a bit of a deep dive. It's an old school looking website, but lots of really good information. I'm so glad it's.
Yeah, when the website came out, every second or third Phantom website, including one that I built, had the same purple background. It was right. Like the official that's all purple was. Background. This was back at the turn of the century, so like 20 years ago. It was the other one, Phantom Wiki, which is probably at the moment the main Phantom resource. There is another one as well, which we can't give out the name of it or the URL because that's still in development and it's a bit of a hush secret project. But Patreons will learn about that very, very soon. And then, of course, there's the Chronicle Chamber website as well. There's some information on there that we've sourced from here. And then, of course, there's some fans from around the world as well. In no particular order, Ankit from India, Swarit from India as well, Ivan Pedersen from Norway, and then Mikkel Lick, who is, and most of these people have had something or continually have something to do with Chronicle Chamber as well. So a huge shout out to those guys. We'll try and remember to give them a shout out at the end as well. But what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about basically some facts, kind of go from there.
I guess the premise of this, and not to jump in, Jim, but the premise of this is like, hopefully we can teach everybody something that you maybe didn't know about the fandom. If you're a newer fan, then you may not know any of what we're about to say. They're just odd little snippets of weird phantomness from across time and across the world. I'm sure that lots of our listeners who are dedicated fans will know some of these, but I'm really hopeful that, you know, anyone listening is going to find out something new about the fandom that they didn't know before.
So of the 10 that we're going to talk about tonight, how many of those did you know about?
Before you told me in planning for the website, for the podcast?
Yeah.
Now I'm counting, and this is the worst podcast ever. I don't know. I'm going to say about 7, I suppose, and the others, none of them really surprised me, come out of absolute nowhere. But probably 7. Probably 7 I sort of knew about.
Yeah.
2 or 3 I put on the list myself, of course. So.
All right. So first of all, now this is not a dig at Lee Falk, and we know Lee Falk. He's an amazing creator. He created the Phantom, Mandrake, and many plays and stuff like that. But his one kryptonite, or his one weakness, was the fact that he didn't focus on continuity. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a bit of fun about how Lee Falk kept it in the family. So the first one we're going to talk about is Princess Pura. And I am going to be bringing...
Pura? Didn't she marry the Phantom at some stage, Jim?
She did, but which Phantom I want to know. So basically, I'm going to show... So if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see some of these panels that I am sharing. So Princess Pura, in various stories, the one that I'm showing up now is of her basically marrying the third Phantom.
So this is in Alexander's Diamond Cup, the story Alexander's Diamond Cup.
And so this is the continuation of this one here. And then in previous stories, this one here, so the first panel up the top, I'm just trying to remember what the story is.
Captain Amazon, this one?
Captain Amazon, which is a Sunday story. This was the fourth Phantom marrying the Maharaja's daughter. So this is the fourth Phantom marrying his mum. So...
well, she's held her age well, is what I would say about that.
And then the other one is, this is the heirs story. So these couple of stories here are brilliant because they talk about a lot of Phantom's wife. If you ever want to go back and have a look at them. This is the 11th Phantom marrying a Maharaja's daughter without Papa's blessing. Now, you commented about...
Is her name Pura as well?
It's the same image. And it's the same scenario. So look, now we all have a bit of fun and stuff like that, but so that's the first one. Now this is Princess Pura marrying 3 different Phantoms. Now you're probably thinking, oh, surely that's just a once-off, but no, the first and second Phantom also married the same woman. So now these stories is the heirs, and then also I can't remember what the other one is. So I'll just show these up again. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see them. There we go. So this one is the heirs. So this is the first Phantom married one of the great admiral's granddaughters. Now we know that there is a nice family connection with Christopher Columbus. So this is the first Phantom marrying a granddaughter of Christopher Columbus. And then in the other story, it is the second Phantom marrying Marabella, granddaughter of Columbus. And it's the same image. There's another one where basically the Phantom's decided to marry his mum.
Yeah, well, I can't quickly tell you the stats on that one, but the Princess Pura, who as you showed us, married the 3rd, the 4th, and the 11th Phantom, those stories were written in 1970, 1979, and 1989, respectively. So about 10 years apart. And yeah, it's pretty clear that Lee Falk didn't keep a detailed family tree next to him, next to his writing desk when he was writing.
No, so there's definitely, and I remember in what was it? It was I think it was the Phantom Goes to War issue. There in the center page, I think it was, there was 2 Phantom fans, and I believe one of them was actually Peter Stephen, who a lot of fans will probably be aware of, who had a go at creating the Phantom family tree of the dates, who they married, and when they died. And when you look at those 2 side by side, there was a lot that did not match up.
Yeah.
So it's
small wonder if Lee Falk wasn't keeping track of it and then just wrote him in. Oh, he must have. Oh, I do remember. There was a Maharaj's daughter, wasn't there? Right, throw her in again.
Yes. So that's our first random fact that we wanted to discuss. So hopefully you found that interesting. Dan, do you want to have a go at our second one?
Yeah, well, everyone is super aware of the Phantom's costume, of course, and we know that the skin-tight costume and the cowl and the mask and all the rest of it is, the origin of the superhero trope. We've heard so much about that on the Phantom Never Dies podcast you talked about before, Jim, about how that set the tone for comics going forward. And so you just automatically just see that skin-tight outfit on the Phantom when you do picture our hero. But one of the very first comic books ever to collate the newspaper strips into a book actually featured the Phantom almost nude, just with the trunks and the cowl, no skin-tight costume at all. Trunks, cowl, and gloves only, not even boots.
Yeah. And so for those who don't know, this is like you said, one of the first ever Phantom comics. In fact, there's only 2 known Phantom comics that exist before this.
So this is the one from 1937, about March or April of 1937. Correio Universal O Fantasma from Brazil. It's a very interesting take on a very interesting interpretation of what they must have thought they saw in the comic book. Phantom nearly nude, basically wearing swimmers and a swim cap.
Yeah. It's for me, I love the cowl. But we managed to keep the cowl on and the mask, but yes. It almost looks like a shopping bag put over his head or something like that.
Yeah.
Or those swimming caps. They've kind of
the old school ones where they tie under the chin.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and then the baggy gloves says just to round out the outfit.
Yeah. And then so we thought we pulled up another comic from the same era, which was released a month later. Can I actually get it?
The Italian one?
Yeah, it's not letting me. There it is.
There it is.
So again, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to pick this up.
Lumo Mascherado. For a long time, this was what everybody thought was the first Phantom comic.
Yes. Now, if you're looking at, to be fair and not to, and jokes aside, I can see where the Brazilian publishers and editors and artists got it from, because we've got to remember this was the first costume superhero.
Yeah.
So, you're seeing things like the eyes shown. The gloves were on for a couple of weeks and then they were off. But it's just, it's kind of funny. And then you see very similar scenes as well. You've got Phantom and Diana kissing down here at the bottom. You got the leap of faith to the left as you look at the cover. And then if you go back to the Brazilian one, you've got the kiss there, you've got the leap of faith and stuff like that. Yeah. So now there's no chance there's no chance that either publisher would have been able to pick up the phone and say, so are we doing how are we colouring this, or is it actually what's the go? That wouldn't happen back in 1936.
Oh, and they're taking their cue from the first 2 or 3 weeks of the strip when Lee Falk and Ray Moore were still working it out themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a really good point you make there about it was the first skin-tight costume superhero, so they just wouldn't have expected that. Yeah, so
I love the cover. I love the old school about it. You know, like the redrawn panels and stuff like that. What I find interesting, besides the lack of clothing on the Phantom, but is the similar poses that was used throughout. It's
they must have really struck everybody.
Yeah. What I like about this one as well is that Phacts Horton's on the front cover, probably expecting him to be a integral key to the story. But after the first, month, we never see him again.
Yeah.
Surely there has to be a story where we see a little bit of a prequel about this.
Oh, isn't the back catalogue of Phantom stories just so rich with opportunities to fill some gaps?
So yeah, that was a really cool one. I really enjoyed that one. Having a look at basically, how people depicted the costume and stuff like that, and depicted him as basically a guy running around in swimming shorts and a swimming cap. Now, I'm going to let you go the next one as well, Dan, because I know this is quite close to you. And you've got to do some explaining as well.
I'll do some explaining, or you will.
No, okay.
Yeah, I said the question's going in. No, it is quite close to me geographically and I don't know, just a part of my youth, and that's the Fandom Club of Australia, the John Henderson's Fandom Fan Club, which I became a member of when I was about 11. I know it folded a bit before you were sort of aware.
The rest of us weren't even born then, so yeah. That makes me feel old, but I'll take it on this occasion because it meant that I've got my membership cards to Hendo's Fandom Fan Club. I'm just seeing it over my shoulder there. The official Fandom Club, no, it wasn't the official, the unofficial Fandom Fan Club of Australia. And I just love the fact that it was what became to me a huge, or what I thought was just a huge business operation, all run out of the bottom of someone's house, an old Queenslander in Coorparoo, a suburb of Brisbane. For Australians, Coorparoo is only about 2 good footy kicks away from the Gabba, and actually, as we speak, it's probably underwater. The Queenslander that used to host the Phantom Club has probably got its basement flooded out at the moment because there's a lot of water flowing through Brisbane. But the point being, I guess, that I was just blown away, and I might share just by way of showing people and talk you through it. Just the volume of stuff that came out of the Phantom Fan Club. I'm looking in our P3, the Phantom Preservation Project, at the moment, and just wanting to show people a few things that the club produced there in terms of newsletters. Over 40 newsletters they produced. Oh, I'm in the wrong club. What am I doing? No wonder there's nothing here. Fan clubs. Independent Phantom Club is what it's called, of course. Well, that's it just goes to show that there's a lot there, even when the people that curate it get lost.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So no, this is going to be much more prolific. So if we go into what's membership of the Independent Phantom Club, that's an example of a certificate of membership. I should probably scan mine in there too, and not just shame Trevor Clark by showing his Phantom Fan Club. The product catalogues were just amazing in terms of the merch that they produce, and this is, I think, for a lot of collectors now, what they seek in terms of the Phantom Fan Club. The rings that they produce, the badges, the shirts, mugs, Monkeys of Melbourne, products all sold through the fan club as well. The newsletters, which I mentioned before when I was talking about the wrong club, but the Jungle Beat, there was 41 produced, and these are 8, 10, 12 pages at a time. It went for years, and a bunch of ads for it as well off the back of comics and that sort of thing. So and so much of what has become iconic about the Phantom, I think, like the Wilson McCoy As You Were Gentleman pose. These were some of the shirts, some of the images that were chosen for early merch. the rings, the designs, they really solidified a lot of these designs, a lot of these images in people's minds, I think, in Australia. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just the old farts talking.
So for those who don't know, when you say underneath an old Queenslander, explain what a Queenslander is, because I know everyone in Queensland will probably understand what it is, but we are an international podcast.
True. A Queenslander is a wooden house built up on. Oh well, don't know. In this instance, it's up on stilts. It's a wooden house with verandas and balconies the whole way around, and lots of breezeway because you're trying to get as much air through as possible. But it's just the style of houses that in colonial times were built up here, and the really expensive suburbs now have got these Queenslanders that have all been done up. So. The space underneath is usually used to park the lawnmower or the Valiant Ute or whatever the car was of the house. But in this instance, in the 80s, Hendo set it up as a fandom club, and I wish I'd had the chance to visit. We have done a podcast with these guys. We should mention.
Yes, and what episode was that?
You looked it up before. 81, was it? I'm not looking at the run sheet now.
Yeah, it's 81. So that was back in 2017. So even if you weren't a part of the fandom club and you're a young fella like I am, it is still worth going back and listening to it, because the amount of history and stuff like that, you understand why the Phantom was so big in the 80s and the 90s, and it was pretty much off the base of that. And it was so popular that there was another Phantom club that tried to come up and try to rival it and try to pay money for it, and it was run out of some guy's back garage. And they had 2-3 employees, actually employed people running the club. That's how popular it was.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, very cool. And I know that the Scandinavian Fandom Club has also got thousands and thousands of members, and but that was, correct me if I'm wrong, more affiliated with the comic, whereas this one was just some guy who decided he wanted to do it. Yes,
that is correct. So that's rather cool. So everyone has probably at least learnt what a Queenslander is, if they didn't know about the club as well. So now what we're going to talk about is name changes. Now there's a couple in here. And the thing that I like about this is that we're actually going all around. So we're going to cover Australia. We're going to cover 2 countries in Europe, and then we're also going to touch in Asia as well. So this is something that's that is interesting, that I'm sure a lot of fans probably won't know about them all. Even some of them I didn't know about it as well. So first of all, we're going to fly we're in Australia, now we're going to fly over to India. And for those in COVID-stricken times, for some of us, this is the only way we get to go to other countries. So we're in India, and devil is called Bagha or Baha, which doesn't actually mean devil in the local language. This is in the Bengali language. Hero is called Tufan, Tufan or Tufan, and all the Indians are laughing at my bad pronunciations at the moment. And basically that means storm. Now, the one that's actually the more interesting one is that we know Bengali, whether you pronounce it pre or post colonial days in the Phantom comic of either Bangala or Bengali, it's very close to the actual location of the Bengal area in India. So you've got the Bay of Bengal, you've got the Bengali language. And so what the folks at Indrajal did, which was which was the comic from the Times of India, which was a newspaper, they actually changed the language, didn't change the language, they changed the country from Bengal or Bengala to Denkali, which is Denkali. So that one's rather interesting, that they've actually totally changed the whole Phantom's country because it sounded too close to an actual Indian location. Now, I must admit, I find this confusing because if anything, I would have thought they would have been highlighting the fact that, hey, this is an Indian comic because he's in Bengali, which is a nation of India. So I'm not sure if there was like a state versus state rivalry.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm thinking if Frew had, and I know they did dabble early in the piece with Diana Palmer coming into Sydney Harbour and that sort of thing. But if
that was the Women's Weekly, not
was,
Frew.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, but if the fandom had been a Sydney-centric comic, I don't know that it would have done as well in Queensland as it has. So maybe there is a lot of state versus state rivalry in India as well.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they have. They're pretty mad for their sport as well, especially like soccer, hockey, and cricket. So I'm sure there's a lot of state versus state rivalry. So I reckon that might be the reason why the Times of India changed the name of the location. But what's actually interesting is it only happened in the Indra comics. So since the Indra, we've had Egmont, Euro, and also Diamond comics. Now we can confirm that the nation was changed. Sorry, the name of the country was changed back in the Euro and Egmont and also Regal. Now
Changed back to Bengali.
Back to Bengali, but I'm not 100% sure about the Diamond comics. And I have asked Ankit and Swaroop about this as well, and they're not 100% sure as well. So it's interesting that it only happened for that one publication. Apart from that, newspapers, comics afterwards, it was always Bangala.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's something pretty cool, something really interesting. Now, did you want to go over Sweden? Because I know you're a big Sweden lover.
I'll do my best to represent Mikkel's input here, because you mentioned at the start about people who have contributed, and obviously Mikkel Lick, our Swedish correspondent, has been in touch, as you said, and he's contributed something. This has got to be his, so I'll do my best to do it justice. There was a Swedish newspaper that published Fantomen under the name of Dragos. Am I I'm understanding that right? The Phantom comic, the Phantom in Australia, Fantomen in Sweden, went by the name Dragos. So Mikkel's going to go through and do an article for us later, and it'll appear on chroniclechamber.com, and you'll be able to read all about it there. But according to Mikkel's early notes to us, they wanted to publish Mandrake under the name of Mandragos, as the translation from Mandrake to the Swedish of Mandragos, but somehow they sent in the wrong strips or something. I'm going to be fascinated to read this proper story. They've sent in the wrong strips. They've sent in the Phantom, but called it Mandragos, like a clerical error, perhaps. And so someone had to do a really quick title change so that it was Dragos. That's just bizarre. Like,
it is, isn't it? It's such a cool story. And what's interesting is that Dragos stayed as the name of the Phantom for just this newspaper for like decades. It wasn't
one particular newspaper.
Just one particular newspaper.
And that for decades, did you say?
For decades, yeah. It's such a cool story. And this is the thing that I love about doing this podcast, is that you're coming up with just random weird facts that is just like you can just picture some guy going, "Oh, I love the character Dragos." The what? That purple, that blue dude who's got the dog. You mean the Phantom? Phantom Man? No. Dragos.
Oh, I thought that Dragos was the name of the strip, but the Phantom was still the character somehow.
No. So Dragos is the name of the Phantom.
Goodness me. And Mikkel does note here that he's trying to find out more information about this, but he heard that it may also have been a story that to fool the Germans when they were reading the newspaper during World War One, thinking that Dragos may have been a more Swedish name and not picking up that it was an American comic. So fascinating again that the impact and the way that the Phantom, or Dragos in this occasion, became a hit in Sweden, and how it was used.
Yeah. Look, I love the story. It's a great story. So yes, I know I'm looking forward to Mikkel's article on this, and his research into it. Now the next one,
Yeah, you got to tell us this one because I know this is a personal favourite of yours.
this is a personal favourite of mine. I love this story, and I love messing with people about this story. Just because, like, you know, and I've done it with you on the podcast before as well. I'm not sure if you remember it, but
Oh yeah,
but so in Norway, and this has happened from the early 40s all the way to current. So every time Norway produces a new story, this is still the case. Diana is Sala, and Sala is Diana. So I'll just let that sink in for a bit. Diana is Sala, and Sala is Diana. So in Norway, the Phantom is married to Sala, who is still Diana, but their names have changed.
is the character that we know,
The
but the
character is the same, yes. So it's Sala Walker. Now,
and when the character that is Sala appears, they call her Diana.
exactly. Now,
Right.
you got your head around that?
Well, that's just weird. Why do they do that?
Okay, so now this is an article. Now, if you're on YouTube, basically this is where we got this information from. This was from this. You can still find this. This is on the Deep Woods website. So this was translated and adapted by Ivan Pedersen, who most people know who Ivan is. He's the guy who does a lot of colouring of the classic strips for Fru. Who's also in the editorial team for Comics Review, but also the Norwegian Phantomette comic as well. So,
and also is probably your best Scandinavian provider of Fru comics too. Would I be right? Through IP Comics.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, if you're listening to us and you're in one of those Scandinavian countries, and you're probably even European countries, and you're after some Fru comics, talk to him, because he will be probably your best chance of doing it. And he doesn't do it for the money. It's all basically for the love of the character.
Yep.
Okay. So look, we will put this link up in our show notes. So basically what happened was in the Norwegian newspaper called the Aftenposten, which, if you go onto Chronicle Chamber, there is an article about Aftenposten when they stopped publishing the Phantom. So basically, when they were invaded by Norway in World War II, so this is another World War II Phantom story in Norway and Sweden and areas like that. The story that the last printed page was the return of the Cyban, which was one of the first couple of Sunday strips. Now, the leader of the Cyban was Sala, which we all know. She had been very intimate with the Phantom. So basically they were kissing and the Phantom was playing her, and then I'm not sure if you remember the story, but basically she captured the Phantom and then she helped rescue the Phantom, and then the Phantom let her go and stuff like that. So, so some of the editors were believing that the Phantom and Sala were having a romantic. I won't say they were having an affair because neither of them were married. So now, what's actually interesting is one of the reasons why this actually happened was because Diana had actually never been seen in any of the newspaper stories at that stage, because it was only Sunday pages that had been published. And Diana had actually not appeared in any Sunday stories when this story had been published. So if you're reading The Phantom in Norway, you don't even know Diana exists, right? And then you're seeing the Phantom and Sala kissing, you're naturally assuming, and so the editors thought, that they're romantically involved. And then after the war, the Aftenposten started publishing the daily strip. Now, the first story was The Game of Elva, which is from the earlier piece. I think it's about 11 or 12 or Daily Story from the top of my head. And Diana and the Phantom talk about marriage. Now, obviously, back in those days, this was too much for them because the Phantom had just been involved with Sala. And, you know, the Phantom being a bit of a Casanova was probably not a very good look. So what they did, and because Diana and Sala were drawn fairly similarly, they had black hair and they were both attractive, their names were changed. But what's actually interesting, like Dragos, is the name stayed. The names changed, or the names were swapped, continued on for years and years, even to this day. So 1940s, that's what, 80 years later, Sala is still Diana, and Diana is still Sala.
Bizarre. It's just bizarre. I don't know how the Norwegians managed to read their comics.
It's I remember reading that first and just going, and then getting a Norwegian comic and then like believing what they wrote, but actually having to get out a Norwegian comic and try and hunt it down myself and go, oh my goodness, that is actually true. So look, there's a couple of examples of name changes. Now there's some fun ones, some fun trivia ones, and then there's some translation type of areas, changes like when we touched with India as well. So we're going to go up to the next one.
Yeah. So I might start this one off if it's all right, because one of my favourite villains in the Phantom, and I think a lot of people's go to the Phantom villain, the main nemesis of the Phantom is obviously the Sing Pirates. Everybody knows that. It's almost, for me, for such a long time, I almost felt like the Phantom and the Sing Pirates were like Batman and the Joker. You know, it's just the natural antagonist. Am I right?
Yeah.
So what I want to show you here is the Phantom Wiki page. Phantom Wiki is an awesome resource. We know this. The Phantom Wiki page for the Sing Brotherhood, and it is full of information about the Sing Pirates, because we know that it's a massive chunk of Phantom history. And Lee Falk must have absolutely loved this character or this set of characters until you get down here and you find out that Lee Falk, in the daily and the Sunday stories across his 60-something years of story writing, used the Sing Brotherhood in the very first story. They had a bit of a partial reference in another story, The Belt, where we find out that the 20th Phantom died because the Sing Pirate stabbed him in the back. But that wasn't a story about the 20th Phantom or the Sing Pirates. It was sort of here's what happened aside as part of a different story. And then one more time when he mentioned them as in a story called Buried Treasure, this is obviously near the end because it's drawn by Olsen and Williams, as the Sang Pirates. So Lee Falk only used the Sing Brotherhood in 3 stories at best, one where they were the actual antagonist, one where they were sort of referenced, and one where he got the name completely wrong.
And I love how you go through this page and like if you scroll through again, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see this.
Yes.
Team Phantom have literally got a Sing Pirate leader for all 21 Phantoms.
Yeah, according to Team Fundaman. Yeah, well, because that's it. If I just scroll down a little bit further, because I'm just showing you the Daily Sun. Here's the Team Fundaman stories, including the Sing Pirates. It's page after page after. They don't number them, but there must be 80, 100.
I reckon at least 100.
Yeah,
even 3 do the Sing Pirates as much as what Lee Falk did.
That's exactly right. Frew have got 3, and they've only been doing their own stories for about the last 3 or 4 years. It's 60 to be fair, but
it's this is another one that I like as well. And I'm like you, growing up, it was always the Phantom and Sing Pirates, Batman, Joker, and I wonder if that's because, you may be loath to admit this, but I wonder just how influenced we are by what we read with the Team Phantom end stories.
Maybe, because you're right. There is a lot of Sing Brotherhood. So we just saw that. A lot of Sing Brotherhood stories from Team Phantom. I actually put it down to, I thought it was probably, we saw a lot of reprints. I did as I was growing up. So the Sing Brotherhood might have only been one story, but it came around pretty regularly. And also...
for those who came in late.
For those who came in late pages, particularly in the Sundays, we actually saw the swearing of the oath and the Sing pirates killing the first Phantom's father a number of times. So whether that helped it sink in.
Well, in the Fru comics in the, I would say 600s, 700s, 800s, maybe even 900s, I don't have any quick. You open the comic, at first on pretty much every single page, you've got for those who came in late. So you've got, and it was the Cybari version, and then
sometimes the Raymore.
You got the Phantom crossed arms above it and all that. So I wonder if that's partially why it's been ingrained. So it's probably a bit of that. You've got the same story being published a few times, and every single comic, or at least every second comic, there's a for those who came in late.
I think that's a pretty powerful influence.
And then you've got all the Team Phantom Men stories as well. That and Team Phantom Men created some great stories about the Sing Pirates, and they were always larger than life type of characters. Like I remember the one about the big Zeppelin. So they go there, and then they go in this big underwater cavern, type of thing, and then the Phantom blows that up, and he has to try and shoot up, and it's obviously taking a lot from the first story as well. But the Sing Pirates were such, I don't want to use the word glamorous, but they were a glamorous, outgoing, flamboyant type of bad guys, and then you had Diagai Singh, who was the despicable one, and then even when I was reading a story recently, the Golden Rune one, you had the leader then was a princess, and she was not showing much clothes, and she was very attractive but also very deadly, and so again it's kind of like a female version, a much better looking female version than say Diagai Singh, but kind of like that. And so they were that glamorous villain. Yeah.
Oh, look, it's the Team Phantom certainly. We talk about gaps that Lee Falk left and the way you can tap into them. The Team Phantom absolutely nailed the vein there, where they created a generation of Sing family members and pirates that continue to current day with Sandal Singh and Nadir, so they've really done well there. You've got to admit, to really explore and flesh out what are some pretty cool villains that Lee Falk created right from the get-go, and for whatever reason. But he's got form, doesn't he, Lee Falk? He created a lot of cool villains and then only used them once and walked away.
Yeah, so I think General Babubu was probably the most. I think we talked about this in our last Comics and News podcast.
Yeah,
we were talking about the Eastern Dark. So you got Eastern Dark was used more. General Babubu was used more, and then you've got, if you don't mind me saying it, cooler villains, which I would personally see more, like the Vultures, Hydra, and even the Scorpia is another one as well. And then we've seen
all really good organisations that the Phantom could really sink his teeth into over multiple generations and multiple stories for sure. But Lee Falk only used each of those, the Vultures, the Hydra, and Scorpia, only the once.
Yeah, even the Skyban he used.
Yeah,
he used more. He used that twice, but that's more than those others.
I know we do. Wish that Lee Falk had kept a family tree and that sort of thing. And it would have been cool if he'd used some of these villains multiple times. But it just goes to show the creativity of the man, in the sense that he's going, oh, well, I've created a really cool villain. That's it. I'm never going to use those again. I'm going to come up with another really cool villain. So,
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that I do like is was it last year or the year before we had the Year of the Vulture? So we had like about 4 or 5 stories of the Vultures.
Yeah.
Shane Foley's is expanded on the Scorpia legacy. Yeah. I know Team Phantom have also done a couple of Scorpia stories as well. The Hydra, I believe, has been done by Team Phantom a couple of times as well. I've always found it interesting on who created Hydra first. Was it the Marvel creators or was it Lee Falk? And unfortunately, it was Marvel that created it first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we still have the first skin superhero.
We also had the first swimmer as a superhero as well.
As it turns out.
All right, so while we're talking about the costume of the Phantom there, we're going to go over. Now, this one is probably well known to most people. So, again, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see what we are sharing. Again, we are using deepwoods.org as a reference of this. Now, basically, as we saw with the Brazil comic and also the Italian comic, the Phantom back in the early days was a whole myriad of different colours. The Italian comic had yellow pants, green striped trunks, and a red top. I think Australia had like a lime green, and I kind of look like you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the is it the cricket team that had the lime green outfit in the 80s or the 90s?
I remember us being canary yellow for a little while. The Irish teams always looks a bit.
So so
it was Women's Weekly again, wasn't it? That for whatever reason had the Phantom as green on one or two of the early covers.
So if we just kind of go through, you've got the Women's Mirror, which was May 1938. It's a lime green. Now, to be honest, that lime green goes brilliant against the red background. So I wonder if that's probably got more to do with it. In Ace Comics, in the first time he was appeared in basically a comic in America was February 1938. He was brown, which kind of makes sense. And then in Italy, which we talked about, you had the red top and cowl, green briefs, orange tights, and yellow gloves. Now, it's a real assorted rainbow colour there.
You're going to see him dropping out of the trees.
Yeah. Is that a toucan? No, it's the Phantom.
A bowl of Fruit Loops dropping on your head.
And then, of course, in the USA, which is interesting that the USA actually had brown and red before they actually had purple. So in one of the first Big Little book, which I don't know why they call it a big, because it's a little book, which are probably about so big. I thought I had one nearby. No, I don't.
There's a lot of pages, even if they're not.
Yeah.
So they're little into the cover size, but quite thick.
Yeah. So anyway, it was red. Now, we all know that there are certain people that love a grey costume. Glenn Lumsden. So howdy, Glenn. And we know he loves grey because he puts it on the giant size and all that. However, should the Phantom be grey? Now, let's have a look at these are all references we've got these references from the Deepwoods website. So on the 7th of May 1936, it says, "No one sees a grey-clad arm reach for a parachute." Fisher of Pearls.
That's less than 3 months. That's less than 3 months after the start of the comic.
Yes, less than 2 years after. You got the bad guy saying he was a tall fellow, all in grey, sort of queer costume. So, there's that. Going now into the 40s, and this is all before he was coloured purple. In the Seahorse in 12th of April 1940, this bad guy goes, "Maybe I'm batty, sir, but when we were falling, I could have swore I saw something grey slimmering up that rope." Mermaids of Merlot Straits in 1945, grey suit, mask. What was his racket, I wonder? The Devil Road in 1948. The tunnel guard has a split-second glimpse of the grey figure. Then wham! And then the Matchmaker, 1953. moving silently, unseen like a grey ghost. Now, I wonder, this is not actually on our run sheet, but I wonder if this is where we got the theory about the grey ghost being the name of the Phantom, was because of this panel.
Oh, probably. Yeah, probably. Like, what stands out to me then is that Lee Falk clearly had in his mind that the Phantom was in grey. And he mentioned it for the first time, as I said there, inside the first 3 months of the comic strip. And the last one you've mentioned there was from 1953. So that's 17 years after the start of the comic strip. So for the first at least 17 years, Lee Falk had in his head when he was writing that the Phantom was grey.
Now, it wasn't until 1936, the heavyweight champion, which is one of my personal favourite stories, that the Phantom's costume was directly described in the text as anything other than grey. And that was, you can see here, if you're on YouTube, you've got the announcer. Just before he's about to say, let's get ready to rumble, he says, in this corner wearing purple tights, weighing 200 pounds, the challenger, unknown Walker. So you've kind of got there in 1956. So that's 20 years after it was created. Lee Falk finally gives up the losing battle and goes, well, I guess he's purple. Yeah. Now, there are plenty of theories around how did purple come about. Now, the printing era always seemed like a tall story. However, when I was about 18, 19, or was I about 20? I don't know, around then, I had the opportunity to do a short stint actually in a newspaper. And then I was involved in the graphic design, and then I had a little bit to do with that. I didn't actually do the printing, but I actually got to see printing involved. And one of the first things that they actually told me was about how grey, if you don't use the right tones, it can actually turn out purple. Now, for someone who had always believed that that was not the case, when you hear that as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, I wasn't actually listening to what they're saying. I'm just thinking grey, purple, printing, Phantom. Now, that's just where my mind went. And I'm sure every other person that got taught that, that's where their mind went as well. So it was like, oh, wow. And then what was interesting is when I went to uni, which was a couple of years later as well, we also learned about printing in our graphic design courses. And again, if you don't use the right tones, it can come out differently. And basically, the number one rule we got taught, because computer graphic design was coming into it, is if you're ever doing anything for print, never send something to the printers until you print it out first. Even if it's just on your home little computer, because what gets printed out will always be different than what you see on the screen. So maybe, just maybe, the story about a printing mistake is there is actually some truth behind that.
Fair enough. It's interesting because this is something that I think most fandom fans know. Like if you're a fandom fan enough to have listened to halfway through episode 213 of Expand the Fandom podcast, you probably do already know that the Phantom was intended to be grey originally. But even I've had a little bit of a surprise there to think that it's been 17 or 20 years. It was 20 years after the Lee Falk started writing the Phantom before he acknowledged in the strip that the colour was purple. And up until, only a couple of years before that, he was openly calling him grey. And that's a huge chunk of time for Lee Falk to be labouring under the misimpression that the Phantom was actually grey. He'd been purple for ages, and Lee Falk didn't know.
I can't remember when the first Sunday came out. It was it 1939 or something like that? So
39,
yeah. So from 1939 to 1956, that's what 15, 17 years.
Yeah,
it took for Lee Falk to start including that he was actually purple.
Yeah. He fought the good fight for a long time.
He did. Now,
maybe the KFS checks fine and convince him otherwise.
Yeah. Now, so do you cards on the table. Do you prefer grey or do you prefer purple or another colour?
No, purple.
You actually prefer purple?
Yeah, I do. And I'm I like purple enough that I even convinced myself that it's actually not a bad camouflage color, particularly if it's a darker purple.
Purple, yeah.
Yeah, a darker purple, not your bright, violet or hibiscus purple, but a dark purple. I think would actually work well in the shadows and amongst tree leaves and all that sort of stuff. So I actually think it would be a decent jungle camouflage as well. So
yeah. Now the purple from the Marvel series that Glenn Lumsden and Dave DeVries did, that was a purple that I liked. It was still purple, but it was like that dark purple that, meant that he could kind of go in the shadows. And that's the Phantom. The Phantom is a shadow. And it's hard to be in the shadows when you've got, bright purple.
Or lime green. Or red for that matter. And that's where I can't see red or even blue. Like those don't really make sense to me as jungle camouflage colours, whereas the purple I can see more. Because like as I was about to say, even the Billy Zane costume, and I know none of us, well, I certainly didn't like the skull motif that they actually had on the costume. It really needed to be just the plain purple for mine. But it was a nice dark purple that I think worked for the character.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to number 7.
Right. Now this one is close to my heart because in the same way that Germ really enjoyed,
hence why you put it in there.
Absolutely, it's an underutilized part of fandom history, and I like this in the same way that you really enjoyed talking to your cousin Jeff Parker a few podcasts ago, because an underutilized or an under-recognized fact, in my opinion, is that the first ever colonial township mentioned in the Phantom was actually Fraser Town, which is described as a settlement on the outskirts of the Phantom's jungle. Now, Fraser Town only actually appeared in 2 Lee Falk stories, which I guess makes it as important as the Sing Pirates. In that sense,
that was 3.
He got the name wrong in the 3rd one, and I'll argue that Fraser Town was mentioned, was named in 2 but used in 3 Lee Falk stories because it appeared in the first time we heard it named was in the 3rd daily story, War in the Jungle, which a lot of people might know as the Diamond Hunters as well. They followed up with references to Fraser Town again in daily 4, the 4th daily story, Little Toma. And they also, at that point, identified it as being in Bengal. Those are the only 2 stories to actually name Fraser Town. And for people who don't know, people who might not remember, Smiley is the infamous character from War in the Jungle because he's often used as evidence that the Phantom does kill, because that was the first time that we saw the Phantom kill somebody, very much in self-defense if you go back and read the story, but there it is nonetheless. And the first time that Fraser Town is mentioned is actually on 8th of June 1937. So about a bit over a year into the strip, when the Phantom has captured Smiley's partner Hill and tells him that he's going to turn him over to the military court at Fraser Town. I really like, and I don't have the strip up to show the YouTube watchers, unfortunately, but the strip from the 11th of September in 1937 actually has Diana leaving the Skull Cave because she and the Phantom have come to loggerheads about whether they should be married or not because he doesn't want her to live in a cave and she won't accept him moving into the city because the jungle needs him. So typical lovers tiff there. She decides that it's best if they don't see each other again, and so she gets Garan to lend her a canoe, and she jumps in a stream just near the Phantom's country, the Skull Throne there, and paddles directly down that stream to the sea where Fraser Town is on the coast as well. So it's directly connected to the Skull Cave, but unfortunately by Daily 9, so in Daily 8 they mention a settlement. It may or may not be Fraser Town, they don't name it, but in Daily 9 Morristown is used as the name of the township closest to Phantom's country, and Morristown it stayed until it became Moetan about 20 or 30 years later.
Now, I always find these things interesting, and those who listen to the podcast and Dan, you would know as well. I like to fit these things so they actually make sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think we all do. I think that's one of the great things about being a fan and the dynasty hero set in a real life world. You naturally try to make it fit in.
So how do we make Frasertown fit into the Phantom's country? Or can we, or do we just do it as a little quirk and just go for it?
I think there's two different ways that you have Frasertown fit into Phantom country. That it is, and one that I've probably, in my own self-conscious, I suppose, have done for a while, is assume that Frasertown then became Morristown and then became Mowatown. That's probably one that, just a series of renamings. But I guess it's also possible that Frasertown and Morristown were two different townships in different bays as well. But obviously with Frasertown never having been mentioned again by anybody, well, obviously there's a lot going on there.
So I'm not sure about Queensland. I know you build houses on stilts and stuff like that. But over here in WA, when you're having towns like, for instance, I come from a town called Geraldton.
Yep.
That was originally called Gerard's Town. You got Bustleton, which was Bustle's Town, and stuff like that. So that's how I see Morristown named, is that it was named after
someone Morris.
Called Morris.
Yeah.
Now, we do know, and merging universes a bit, we do know that the Phantom came to Marabella, which then became Morristown, which you assume is when the English took over.
Mm-hmm. So Marabella was there when the first Phantom was marooned in the first place, wasn't it?
Yes. So they stopped in Marabella, looked for a pilot. That pilot was Chugger. He betrayed him.
Right.
Et cetera, et cetera. So
it could be a third town, perhaps.
So there's that way. Now, there's actually a town up just south of where I live called Dongra. Now, the reason I make mention of that is because Dongra is actually two towns that have merged together and become one town. It is Dongra, but also Port Denison. So Port Denison was the port, and then you've got Dongra, which was, and like literally, you can walk. There's no difference between.
They just grew together.
They've just grown together. So Port Denison would have been the settlement. One settlement, the settlement literally probably 2-3 k's away is Dongra. As it's grown up, Port Denison is still technically, but it's not Port Denison. It's just a suburb of Dongra now.
Yeah. So Frasertown could be a suburb of Mowatown, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Now, there's just a couple of options. If I was to try and merge them together, is Frasertown could be part of it. And you see it in Perth as well. You've got Fremantle. It's called
it happens all over the place.
Fremantle.
Coorparoo Wodonga is two sides of a single township on opposite side of the river, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one way. That probably makes the most sense, is that they were two settlements. Like Frasertown might have been like where all the military were kind of based. And Morristown or Morristown or Marabella, however you want to do it, is kind of was where the people lived and the port was and stuff like that, and then it just kind of merged and overtook Frasertown. So if I had to make things kind of fit, and I know that's a very long-winded way of trying to do it, but I wanted to kind of give some examples and stuff like that. That's how I would do it. I'll probably do it that they were two separate settlements, and then they've kind of merged together as one.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to include it on this list because I feel like it's my own little personal place in Phantom history.
Fair enough. But remember, your phrase with a PH, so.
Touche.
Going on to number 8. So we're almost there. Now we're going to be talking, if I was to ask you, Dan, to list the top 3 most prolific Phantom riders, who would they be?
Well, Lee Falk, obviously. Claes from Anthe, I know, would be in the conversation. He's probably number 2. And then, I mean, Tony DePaul's been writing for over 20 years in the dailies, and Tim Funderman before that. So he'd probably be who I'd go to for number 3.
Yeah, so that's what I reckon most people would do. Maybe other ones could be Norman Walker, or kind of like something like that. But what's actually
other prolific Tim Funderman, Ulf Grunberg, did he write?
Ulf Grunberg, so that's where most people will probably go for their third one, Tony DePaul or one of those.
I'd lump on Tony.
Yeah, but did you know that is not actually correct? The third
I had a hunch because you raised it.
Yeah, the third most created writer is someone that most fans have never ever heard of, and interestingly, most fans have probably never even read his stories. And that guy is called Peter Menigan. Now, most people are probably going, Peter who? So now, again, if you actually read what we write on our website, you might be aware of who Peter is. But Peter Menigan, and I'm going to, again, be sharing this as we flick through on the screen. So if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. If you are just on audio, we will have all the links to everything we've talked about and all the examples in our show notes as well. So Peter Menigan was basically the creator for the German or the Bastille stories. Now, they created over 250 stories in the 70s and the early 1980s. So they were pumping them out very, very quickly. Now, what's actually interesting is that only one of his stories has been translated into English, and I think it's about 3 or 4 of the stories have been translated into Swedish and published in the Phantom Men comic as well.
Did the English one, was that in like the Frew's 8 Decades, 8 Stories?
Yes, that was.
That one in red?
Yeah, the one in red. Right. So, as you know, Lee Falk wrote 350 Phantom stories, or give or take a few. Close Remufi didn't quite get up to 300. I was really hoping he would get to 300. I think he finished at like 298 or something.
Oh, well.
And then Peter Menigan did 250.
Yeah, right.
So it's Now, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. He did a whole, here's an article with him and stuff like that. Now, you've probably heard us talk about Bastille Comics, and there's the new German series coming out. What's actually interesting is there was 6 stories, I think it was, that was created that had been finished but never actually saw publication. Now, I believe around the middle of the year, so Australia's winter, Europe and Northern Hemisphere's summer, Germany will, Week Publications will be releasing a new series, which will be publishing the unpublished stories, but also some other stories from that as well. They will be in German, but most, a lot of Phantom collectors probably didn't get regular Bastille comics. They're only picking up the odd back issue now, but it gives a chance for more people to learn about Peter Menigan. So, I just think that's really fascinating that someone who's the 3rd most prolific credited Phantom writer, most fans don't know 2 bobs about.
It's an interesting one because it's it's a little bit like the Buddhist riddle. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one around to hear it, did it really make a sound? Like, if there's no one reading his stories, is he really the 3rd most credited author? Of course he is, and it would be fascinating to read more of his stories, because you would think that to have that many published, he must be good at it. I'd love to read more of someone who's clearly that elbow deep in the lore. It would be fascinating to see more of his stuff.
So just going on that, the Bastille kind of created their own lore. So there was no 21 Phantoms; it was only 16 Phantoms.
Right.
And so they.
That's the end of that.
If you think Team Phantom Men changed the lore to suit them, wait until you see what Bastille did.
Yeah, right then.
but they are really, really loved. There's a Basti was a huge, prolific publisher of comics in the 70s and the 80s. There's the new series coming out based on the Basti stories. There's a new book that's coming out, which draws heavily on the influence of the Basti comics as well. So, there was, it's not something just to be kind of kicked off all your weird uncle that you only talk about at Christmas and birthdays. Now, I was wondering, because I know number 10, you want to dig on this one because this is one that you found. So I'm going to go number 9. Now, most fans, if you ask them, what is the longest continuous running Phantom Comics series? I reckon 8 out of 10 people would say Free Comics. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been published continuously since 1948. We're 1912, 1913 issues. Like, we're getting towards 2,000 issues. Been published non-stop for over 70 years, 60 years now. So
Phantom Men did it from 1950. So that's the next closest. Phantom Men stopped. Sparta and all that. But did you know that there is actually a comic series that's actually been running continuous stories longer than Free?
I do now.
And that is the Swedish Christmas album. Now, obviously, it's got nowhere as high as issues as Free, because they only do one a year. But these are the covers here. I'm just going to quickly flick through a couple of the covers. So from 1944.
So 4 years before Free.
4 years before Free, Semic have been producing these covers, it's not that one. Have been produced, I think that one there, this was the first one here. So that was 1944.
1944 Christmas album, yeah, right.
This is 1947 and 1945. So, so it's interesting to know that there is actually a longer Phantom comic series than Free out there.
So for it to be a continuous comic series, they produced a comic, for Christmas? It's a Christmas album.
Christmas album.
Every
year.
Every year. Christmas, since 1944.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And
as you say, it's not anywhere near as many issues, but it's certainly a longer chronological record.
It's just one of those unique Phantom random facts that Phantom nerds like us and like you that are listening to this will find interesting. And I hope you enjoyed that one. And number 10, Dan, you want to take us off? Number 10?
And this is one I threw on last night. I was reading some other stuff for some other stuff, and just came across. I was going through my Hermes Press Phantom #1, the complete dailies. It's a second reprint, so whatever. But the point being that I was enjoying reading through it, and for the first time, I actually read the essay that was at the back by Ed Rhodes. He writes a bit of an essay there, and he referenced the fact Ed Rhodes, people who, if you don't know who Ed Rhodes was, he's a highly respected American Phantom fan. We talked about John Henderson and the Phantom Fan Club earlier in the piece. He was one of the two behind Friends of the Phantom with Pete Klaus. He met and made friends with pretty much everyone in the Phantom universe at the time, Lee Falk and Cy Barry, through the late 1990s. Highly respected, massive Phantom scholar, consultant on the movie. He narrated the A&E biography. What am I missing?
He also was the consultant for Moonstone as well.
Yeah, so huge Phantom buff and absolutely to be trusted. So I've got no reason to doubt his claim in that essay that Lee Falk was actually inspired by a real life tribe when he invented the Banda, the pygmy poison people, which I found interesting because it sounds like it's a bit fantastical. These pygmy tribe of Africans who have poison arrows. One scratch means death, and all the rest of it. But to hear that he had actually based that on a real life tribe, I was like, well, that's fascinating to me. So I did a little bit of research. So now I'm just going to share my screen and we have a look here. And according to Ed Rhodes, it was the Achuri, the people of the Achuri forest, that inspired Lee Falk. And I had a bit of a read through this, and it's interesting that, you know, the Achuri forest, which is about where Kenya is now, is my understanding, collected 4 different populations of pygmies, You scroll through here, and there's a little video here that I'm going to press play and share with everybody. There's narration to it, so you'll be able to listen to it on the podcast as well. But for YouTube watchers, you'll be able to see it with us. This is a video from 1939. So exactly the era where Lee Falk was creating a lot of his, phantom world. So it's a video from 1939 that shows how the FA pygmies, which is one of the groups that live in the Ituri forest, process vines to extract poison for their arrows. So I'll just play it now.
The FA pygmies obtain poison for their hunting arrows from the Horota vine. First, they strip the outer bark, then heat the inner bark, where the poison is contained, in the fire. After tapping the vine to loosen the inner bark, the pygmies peel this layer away from the vine's core. They then crush the inner bark to obtain a juice containing lethal poison, which quickly causes nausea and complete paralysis. The poison can be extracted safely this way because to take effect, it must first enter the bloodstream. When tipped with poison, these small arrows need only pierce the skin to become deadly.
So there you go, a little clip from 1939, which is exactly the sort of thing that might have appeared in the cinemas at the flicks. As a bit of world history or whatever it might be. So there you go. I just thought that was really interesting that the tribe there, and it's all based on something that could be real.
Yeah, and like obviously it was different. Like we found out later it was berries, and berries are only grown in certain locations and all that. But the fact that it was like, and if you know anything about poison and stuff like that, which I hope not everyone does, but there is that extraction way of doing it. Like I know there's a bean or something that if you eat the bean without the shell being cracked, it can pass harmlessly and you won't die. But if the shell is cracked and you eat it, you will die and stuff like that. So there's all that type of stuff. Like, what was it, rhubarb? I think the stalk's not poisonous and the leaf is, and so like there's all that type of stuff as well. So, but like just watching that, you're right. You could picture Lee Falk or Ray Moore, and obviously there's the dual creators.
Of course,
you could picture them talking about it, saying, "Oh, watch this video," or "I watched this at the flicks," and just building from that. I thought it was really cool because we know that. So this is part of why the fandom works for us, and then we've already referenced it tonight about how he's a real life character who sort of fits into the real world that we actually exist in. And so for the tribes that he's hanging out with in the jungle to be as realistic and true to life as that. It's an extra cool little element for me. So, I'm certainly going to be reading up on the Ituri peoples as much as I can just to, find a little bit more about that. Definitely. All right. So that's 10 random cool phantom facts with a PH that we have brought to you. Now, there's plenty of others that I'm sure we've missed. And I'm sure there's going to be some that are probably might not completely agree with some of the facts that we've presented to you, or didn't like the way that we pronounced certain words. So feel free to hit us up on if you're listening to us on YouTube on the what do you call it, in the comments section. If you're on social media, Or, of course, we are on our email, which is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. Our website is chroniclechamber.com. You can find everything we do, all our reviews, all our podcasts, all the latest news, links to our social media as well. Everything we post up on the website goes up on social media, or you can subscribe, and then you will get an email notification every time we go live with a new article as well, which is a pretty cool way of finding out about it. Now, again, which we touched upon at the start of the podcast, the sources that we use during this podcast is deepwoods.org, amazing website. Go check it out if you haven't. phantomwiki.org, again, another amazing website if you haven't checked it out. chroniclechamber.com. Now, we don't really need to know. We don't really need to tell you how awesome that website is, but we will. Awesome website. Go check it out. And then, of course, there's certain fans as well. So there's Ankit Mitra, Swarit Chand, Ivan Pedersen, Mikkel Lick, and, of course, Ed Rhodes, which we talked about just then as well. So, again, make sure you listen to us, subscribe to us, follow us, rate us. We will be having we've got a couple of giveaways that we need to get rid of as well, so we'll probably have a couple of prizes. So make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, Podbean, Player FM.
Probably should mention too the Patreon. I referenced the P3 earlier. We both did actually for various things, and a lot of what we found for tonight was files and videos. The A&E biographies in there, all of the Fandom Club stuff's in there as well. So if you're keen to access and have a read through those Jungle Beat newsletters and all that sort of stuff, you can hit us up on Patreon and get access to the Fandom Preservation Project there as well.
Yes, and the link on that is on our website. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found something cool. Now, again, give us feedback. If you want us to do another one of these in 6 months' time or something as well, please let us know. Until next time, from myself, happy fantasy.
Happy fandoming, guys. Hope you learned something today.
Injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die. The Phantom, the ghost who walks. The Phantom, enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't mind the Phantom.